222. The parties have agreed on the following exhibits thus far. Complainants A is a document headed Marlborough Board of Finance, Budget Development Workshops, March 16, 2010 through March 25, 2010.
I think it may go through April 13.
Yes, I'm sorry, it does. It's a correction, March 16, 2010 through April 13, 2010. Complainants B is a document headed Marlborough Board of Finance, Budget Development Workshops, March 20th, 2013 through April 4th, 2013. Complainant C is a document headed Marlborough Board of Finance, Budget Development Workshop. This will be a notice of the March 20th, 2013 meeting. Complainants D is a document headed Marlborough Board of Finance, Budget Development Workshop, a notice for Wednesday, March 27, 2013. Complainants E is a document headed Marlborough Board of Finance, Budget Development Workshop, notice for April 2nd, 2013. Complainants F, document Marlborough Board of Finance, the minutes of the special meeting, April 4, 2013. Complainants H, Marlborough Board of Finance, special meeting notice for April 17, 2013. Complainants G, Marlborough Board of Finance, regular meeting, Wednesday, April 10, 2013 notice. Complainants H, please. Complainants H, Marlborough Board of Finance special meeting, April 17, 2013 minutes. Complainants I, I'm missing something, excuse me. I'm sorry, Commissioner, I think I might have missed, Council, did you notice that I missed a notice?
I have H as the agenda for April 17, and I as the,
Okay,
and I apologize if I gave them to you in a
see.
H would be the April 17 meeting agenda.
That's what I'm,
G is,
H,
Oh, no, here's the G right there.
right,
G is the April 10 agenda. Then
Right.
H would be the April 17 agenda, and I would be the minutes of April 17.
okay. G is a document, Marlborough Board of Finance, regular meeting, April 10th, 2013, notice. I already did. H, Marlborough Board of Finance, special meeting notice, April 17, 2013. I, the minutes of the April 17, 2013 special meeting, Marlborough Board of Finance. I apologize for that.
You know, I think what it was I may have put them back
In the wrong order.
Yeah.
That's okay. Okay, J is the written testimony of the complainant, Elizabeth Petroni, dated September 4th, 2013. Okay, I think that's correct. Okay, for the respondents, we have respondents 1, document Marlborough Board of Finance, regular meeting, Wednesday, February 13th, 2013, the minutes. Respondents 2 begins with an email from Evelyn Godbout regarding the Board of Finance budget workshops sent February 14, 2013, with an attachment of the Budget Development Workshops notice for March 20th through April 4th, 2013. Respondents number 3, Marlborough Board of Finance special meeting notice, Budget Development Workshops, March 20th, 2013 through April 4th, 2013, and it has a stamp on the bottom from the Town Clerk of Marlborough. Respondents 4 is an email chain at the top of the page. It says from BETH Petroni, dated April 14th, 2013, subject FOI appeal. Respondents 5, Marlborough Board of Finance, annual public hearing, April 29th, 2013, the minutes. Respondent 6, it is a printout of a portion of the town charter for the town of Marlborough, Chapter 6, Finance and Taxation is the heading. Respondent 7 is a printout from the Marlborough Town website listing agendas of, for the Board of Finance of the town of Marlborough. Respondents 8 is another printout from the town of Marlborough website listing minutes of the Board of Finance, and that's it. Parties agree that these are the exhibits thus far?
Yes.
Yes.
Here we go.
Okay. All right, and there's going to be one person testifying, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, if that person could raise their right hand.
Please stand.
Please stand also. Sorry.
You want to do it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. You solemnly swear, affirm, or declare that the evidence that you should give now in the case in question with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you. Did you state your name and address for the record?
My name is Evelyn Godbout. I live at 121 Edstrom Road, Edstrom, Marlborough.
Okay, so, and that's different from,
Yeah,
okay.
you have a complaint on
No.
Okay.
Shut up.
it.
I'm not signing.
Okay.
Okay, all right, no, you're right, okay, all right.
Usually begin with a complainant.
Would you plan to have anything else other than,
No, nothing other than I'd be happy to briefly frame the issues if you care to hear them factually, or
okay,
save that
sure,
for.
no, that's fine. Yeah, just not an argument, just not.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
And if I stray, I'm sure my brother counsel will remind us. As my client's testimony written testimony will establish, the practice historically in the Marlborough Board of Finance, which is a Board of Finance constituted pursuant to the general statutes, and as council has admitted, Exhibit 6 of our town charter, to the town charter, the practice had been to establish at the beginning of the budget season a series of workshops at which there would be discussion with various boards and commissions, and at which there could be discussion, but there would be no vote. That practice changed certainly by 2010, and we submitted an agenda from the 2010 budget season before Ms. Godbout was chair that shows 6 workshops scheduled that include the agenda item discussion, and now I'm paraphrasing, discussion with various towns, town agencies and committees, and then includes, in quotes, possible action.
Mm-hmm.
This year, the Board of Finance noticed 3 meetings, March 20, March 27, and April 4. Thereafter, prior to the March 20 meeting, noticed in a generic, what I'll call a generic agenda with a possible action, and thereafter sent out a specific notice for what it intended to take up at the March 20th meeting. Thereafter sent out a specific notice with what it intended to take up on the March 27th meeting, and sent out an additional and more specific notice with regard to a 4th meeting that would take place on April 2nd. All of those agendas are before the commission. There was also during that time period a regular meeting of the board on April 10 that was canceled because of a problem with the notice. We would submit, and those are largely the facts that we would submit before the commission. Is our position that those are inadequate? Obviously, I'll articulate that at the time of argument. My client indicates in her testimony that she was confused and believed that the April 4th meeting had been canceled because there was no specific notice. At the public comments, which occurred at a later meeting on April 17th, you'll see that there was also at least one member of the public whose confusion was evident, because he said there was no proper meeting on April 4th, it was just never noticed. Those are the facts. I don't think those are largely disputed. Certainly the conclusions we draw and the action we ask this commission to take, or we ask you to recommend, Commissioner, is disputed. But I think those facts are undisputed.
Okay,
At this point, I'd like to call respondent Scott out. You've been sworn in. You're the chair of the Board of Finance, is that right?
Yes.
And how long have you been so? Approximately.
Well, I guess about 6 years.
And how long have you been the chair?
Oh, no, how long have I been on the Board of Finance?
How long have you been on the board?
Well, I've been on the Board of Finance for at least 8 years, maybe 9.
And you've been chair for 6 years? Is that
Well,
right?
you know what? No. Maybe because I'm happy to pay more, so that's.
It's not as easy as you
It's
thought.
Several years.
You can
Several
When
years.
Kathy became
Okay.
selectman, that's when I became chair.
Okay. Okay.
It's been a number of years.
And when does your current term on the board end?
2 years from now.
And are there any, it's an elected position,
Yes, it is.
the whole board?
Yes.
And are there any seats that are available for this coming election in November?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain in your own words the chronology or the process of the the Board of Finance and the creation of the town budget outside of the Board of Finance?
Outside of the Board of Finance, we have a regional middle school and high school. They prepare a budget, and they have their own budget referendum, where their budget passes or not passes. So, you know, we can comment on that, but we don't really have any control over the grand regional school budget. The town operations budget, the town operations for the town hall. There is a town operations budget that the Selectmen's Office prepares and submits to the Board of Finance. There is a budget prepared by the local Board of Education, which is the elementary school, that they prepare and they present to the Board of Finance. We normally, at the beginning, at least since all of the time that I've been on the Board of Finance, when budget season is upon, we schedule, and sometimes they're called workshops or special meetings, and in my mind, regardless of what they're called, it still is a meeting because you have a forum and you have Board of Finance there. It has been my experience, and all the time I've been on the board, that those workshops are for reviewing the budget, meeting with boards and commissions, and taking action on the budget. So there have been other years when we have taken action on the budget during workshops. So in my mind, that was not something that was abnormal.
And Ms. Petroni has been on the Board of Finance for approximately how long, if you can remember?
I think she went on the board a year before I did, possibly a whole year, not gonna be a whole year.
Okay, so
Mm-mm.
at certain
Might be a
special,
half year.
sorry,
Right.
at certain special meetings and workshops in prior years, Ms. Petroni has been involved in the process. Is that
Yes,
right?
she has.
And so she's likely been at a budget workshop / special meeting where not only public comment was taken and discussion had, but votes taken.
Yes,
And she's participated in those votes.
yes.
And the Board of Finance is not the ultimate authority on the town's actual fiscal year budget, is that right? And if I can explain.
But we would recommend a budget to go to town meeting.
Okay, so pursuant to the charter, and chapter 6 of the charter is in evidence, the Board of Finance receives information from the Board of Education, the Board of Selectmen, and others, recommends, and ultimately, the Board of Finance recommends a budget to go to a town meeting vote. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So in other words, the town meeting action is the ultimate appropriation and creation of the budget. Is that right?
Yes.
Were you present at the February 13th Board of Finance regular meeting?
Yes.
And relative to this proceeding, what happened at that meeting that you can remember?
On the 13th?
Was there, at that time, did you schedule these budget workshop meetings?
Oh, you mean on February? Not
February
March.
13th.
February.
Is that what I-
Sorry,
No, you said February 13th.
Okay.
I didn't
Okay.
hear February, I'm sorry.
So at the
no
February,
worries.
at the February 13th
yes.
meeting, there was action by the Board of
Yes.
Finance, and the and it scheduled certain budget workshops, is that right?
Yes, we tried to schedule meetings ahead of time so that everyone would have proper notice, and maybe I can just further discuss is that what we try to do is, try to see if we can have other people present during those workshops, so, one of the, what we call workshops, both boards of eds came and presented their budgets. Another one, we're looking at the budget, and if there's a significant change to a particular area, like the library, we would invite them to come meet before the board.
Okay. And would that reason, in other words, after the creation or schedule of the workshops in February 13th, we'll strike that. First of all, on February 13th, would the Board of Finance actually take a vote to schedule these workshops?
Yes.
And that's reflected in the minutes for that meeting. Okay, and after that vote, if for some reason, why would there be a reason that you might more specifically notice a meeting, a workshop after the fact?
What I was trying to do is give as much information out to people as I could. So if we knew somebody was gonna come and present to the board, or we knew exactly, what was gonna be worked on in that meeting, we would send out an additional agenda just so people would know further that the library is coming to this one. And sometimes we wouldn't have that much notice who was coming. So if we knew specifically that someone was gonna come and present before the board, I would send an additional agenda out just so people would know that those people were gonna be presenting at that meeting. And that was the intent of the other two additional agendas. And the reason an additional one didn't go out for the meeting on the 4th is because we didn't have anybody coming to present, and there was no change in the agenda from the original agenda.
Okay. And the April 4th meeting that we're here talking about today was never canceled, is that right?
No, it was never canceled.
So you never sent a notice of cancellation, Ms.
No.
Petroni? And to get back to the notice that she's claiming she didn't receive, in fact, what was your customary way of providing the members of the Board of Finance with notice of meetings? Was it by email?
I would send an email to the town as well as copy the entire board. So they would get the email where I said we were having meetings on such and such date, and also they would have the agenda attached in that email record. So we try to do as much as we can via email, so we have a documented record until everybody gets the same information.
In Exhibit 2 that's been entered by stipulation is an email that you sent to Ms. Petroni, other members of the Board of Finance, the first selectman, and the town clerk for the town, correct?
For the meeting?
Right.
Yes, I believe.
And if you'd like to look at it to confirm your suspicion.
No, I'm not
Thank
sure what I'm talking about.
Just to make sure that that's your email, and that email went to Ms. Petroni
Yes,
and the town clerk.
any other members of the board of finance.
Thank you. And the attachment is a copy of the agenda for the April 4th meeting and the other two
For all of the
workshops.
meetings, yes.
And just to note, for the record, there's a clerk stamped copy of the attachment to Exhibit 2, which is contained in respondents' Respondents 3, correct. Showing, reflecting at the bottom the stamped copy of posting by the town clerk in February. And you emailed the town clerk as well.
Yes.
And that was in February. Just for the record as well, included within Respondents Exhibit 7, there are several, it's a listing of the Board of Finance agenda. Included, probably the second page. I'm sorry, it's a point. Reflecting that it was added to the website on February 19th is the agenda for the 3 workshops, including April 4th. And the reason you would give notice to the clerk is because the clerk had to do something with the notice. Is that
To
right?
post them, yes, on the town's website.
just ask you, complainants F, should be the minutes for the April 4th meeting. I won't test the memory too much. Handing you what's been marked by stipulation, complainants F. Those are minutes for an April 4th special meeting of the board, correct?
You need to speak up to the mic.
Yes, they are.
And if you review the votes, did votes occur at that meeting?
Yes, they did.
And if you just review the substance of the votes for yourself for now. Exhibit 5, April 29th minutes. Okay. And now I'm handing you what's been marked respondents number 5. That's at April 29th. Minutes of a board finance meeting, right?
Yes,
What's-
they are.
What's the significance of the April 29th meeting in terms of the place in the chronology of creation of the budget as far as the board of finance is concerned?
I'm sorry, let me just inquire, I'm sorry, Council, I lost what date you're on.
April 29th.
Oh, thank you.
Significance of the April 29th.
I apologize.
No.
I'll guide you a bit. It's the annual public hearing.
We have normally an annual public hearing to get input and feedback from the public regarding the budget. And then we hold a special meeting after the public hearing, discuss the budget, we may revise the budget, and at the April 29th meeting, we did have a special meeting after the public hearing, and we did in fact vote on the budget at that time.
When we say vote on the budget,
Vote
what
on the
is-
recommended budget that we would recommend
and the recommended budget then goes
to the town,
to the
for
town
an
meeting.
annual town meeting.
Okay. So the April 29th meeting was the end of the road, if you will, as far as the Board of Finance's creation of a proposal to go to the town meeting. Is that?
Normally it is, yes.
And if you review the actual figures and the votes that occurred on April 29th, reflected in Exhibit 5,
Yes.
And were the votes taken at the April 29th special meeting identical to the votes at the April 4th meeting that we're subject to today?
I don't believe they're identical. I believe there were some changes to it.
But the portions of the budget that were passed first time to the town meeting on April 4th were again passed to the town meeting on April 29th. Right?
We did vote on each of the budgets, and the recommended budget that would go to the town. So yes, there was an additional vote on the 29th on the budget that would go to town meeting,
And that was after holding the Board of Finance's public hearing.
public hearing, yes.
And there was was there discussion at the April 29th special meeting, including just the Board of Finance members, regarding the budget that they ultimately passed on to the town meeting?
Yes, the special meeting would have been with the members of the Board of Finance.
And was Ms. Petroni present on April 29th?
Yes, I believe she was.
And that's reflected in the minutes, correct? Exhibit 5.
Yes.
and she was a seated member at that meeting,
Yes,
and she voted at that meeting.
yes.
During your time on the Board of Finance, has the board had any Freedom of Information Act training?
We had, someone come out, we did have someone come out. I believe it was Tom Hennick, I don't know if it was a year ago or a couple of years ago, to an all boards meeting. And he gave us the little pamphlet and we talked about doing the information things. He also came out again, I believe it was in May 28th. I believe that was after the complaint was filed. And met with the Marlborough all boards and commissions meeting again. And we had further discussion with it.
Okay. So as recently as May of this year, there had been some training from the
Right,
FOIC.
we had a lot of questions and answers.
Can you recall if Ms. Petroni was present at the February 13th meeting where the workshops were scheduled?
I don't believe she
Okay.
was.
It would be reflected in the minutes, and the minutes show that she was not, for the record.
As a matter of fact, I don't think that she was present for any of the budget workshop meetings or special meetings.
Except for the April 29th.
Right.
I could just take a peek at number 4, respondents 4. Ms. Petroni not being here, this was planned for some cross-examination. I just want to point out, if council's okay, that,
Or if you could save it maybe for
or
argument, what do you think it takes?
it's a full exhibit, I could save it for.
And if the issue if the issue commissioner is, and I just want to make clear, not to anticipate, but whether my client received the generic notice of the budget special meetings, there's no claim that she did not.
Okay.
So I would agree with that.
Okay, I rest, respondents rest.
Attorney LaBella?
I do have a couple of questions. Ms. Gabbard, I was going to start with that. So the record is clear. There's no question that you sent out a notice with the 3 special meeting dates sometime around February 19th, correct? There's also no question that you...
Correct.
There's also no question that you did not send out a specific agenda for the meeting of April 4th, correct?
That's correct.
And you mentioned earlier why you file agendas, and you're required to, as chair of the Board of Finance, correct?
Correct.
And one of those reasons I think you noted was to put people on notice of what would transpire at a particular meeting.
Not exactly.
Okay, what did you say?
I said, if we had people coming to present at our
Okay.
meetings, we wanted to give further notice, or if there was a change in the original agenda, to come out.
And the reason you didn't post a special agenda was because there was going to be no changes and no presentations on April 4th, correct?
There was gonna be no change to the agenda,
Okay.
and no special.
There was no one listed as presenting on April 4th, correct? And on April 4th, Nancy Wood, the president of the head of the Marlborough Library Association, gave a budget presentation, did she not?
She was there at the meeting,
Okay.
and
Well,
so
my
we let
question
her
is, did
speak, but she wasn't scheduled to present to the meeting.
Okay, so she just showed up. And is there anything
She
in here?
came to the meeting.
She just showed up randomly.
We did not have her.
Did you know she was coming?
I did not know.
Did any member of the board know she was coming?
I don't know.
There's no question she gave a budget presentation on April 4th, correct?
She did not know.
and I'm just looking, may I use my copy? I'm just looking at the minutes of your board. Gave a budget presentation in details.
Okay, so you're showing,
Exhibit F. There's no question that Cindy Barassa, the bookkeeper for the local school, came and there was discussed revised calculations for the school health insurance costs.
It's in there, and she rested it.
And there's no question that's not listed on the agenda, correct?
Correct.
And there's no question that the first selectman came and answered 18 questions that you as Board of Finance Chair had forwarded ahead of the meeting.
Right, and there was
And
no way
there's-
for me to know when those questions were going to be answered. Can I just further state, Joe, is that, the majority of our meetings, the selectman does come and does give an update on the selectmen.
And that's, no question, that's not listed on your agenda, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now let me talk with you about, Mrs. Petroni, just so the record is clear, she didn't attend a lot of meetings this year, correct?
The last couple of years.
Last couple of years. And this year, certainly, and probably last year for the budget season, you're aware she's fighting pancreatic cancer, correct?
Yes.
You don't begrudge her not attending those
No,
meetings?
absolutely not.
Okay. Oh, and I wanted to ask you another thing about that April 4th meeting. And this, I apologize, it's going to be a little confusing.
Oh, good, so if it's confusing. All right.
At the April 4th meeting, you said that the RAM budget, and I know, 'cause we've been on the Board of Finance together, the RAM budget is voted on separately
Yes.
and can't be rejected by the Marlborough Board of Finance.
We can't have an effect on their budget. We can't cut their budget. We can't, by taking action, modify their budget.
And you effectively rejected the RAM budget this year, did you not?
I didn't reject it. As you see, can I just explain why I got wrote?
I'll be happy to let you explain. If you answer my question, didn't you effectively reject it?
I'm not sure where we're going with this.
Well, I mean, it's
You won't let me
cross-examination.
answer, so.
Well, you're,
My answer would be what?
okay, Attorney Chappell can clarify any confusion that you feel, okay, on his redirecting.
In any event, at the April 4 meeting, there was a motion to accept the RAM budget, correct?
Yes.
And that motion failed 3-2, correct? And just so the record is clear, that is listed in Exhibit F on April 4,
Which is,
the motion concerning the RAM budget. That's listed in the minutes as the motion passing 3-2. And I'll clarify this with Ms. Godbout in a second. That's corrected in the April 17 minutes, because under the charter, it takes 4 votes to pass a motion, right?
Correct.
All right. And I don't mean to be,
I'm sorry, 4 affirmative votes?
4 affirmative votes to pass a motion on a 6-member board. And you were kind enough to answer my question. I'll give you the opportunity to explain if you'd like to.
The meeting of April 4th, the other members put forth motions and wanted to vote on all of the budgets. And I was the one person who did not want to vote on the budgets that night. It's not, may not be reflected in the minutes, but the other Board of Finance members, I'm sure, can attest to that. And they, irregardless, put those motions forward anyways. And the reason I did not vote for the RAM budget was, not that I was totally rejecting it, is that I thought we needed more information.
Okay. You did not want the budget votes to go forward on April 4th.
I didn't think that we should vote in voting.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you
I
said.
didn't agree that we should be voting in the motion.
Okay. Just a couple of other things I wanted to ask you.
I should say not all of them.
Typically in Marlborough, people show up when they know there's going to be a vote on the budget, correct? The public.
I would say most of our meetings don't have meetings.
Most of your meetings don't.
With the exception of one year.
Okay. And finally, with regard to history, you became chair of the board after the 2011 election, correct?
Is that,
That's when,
yes,
that's when the
yes.
current Board of
Okay,
Selectmen was
so
elected.
yes, okay, so that's what I'm saying.
Okay. And your predecessor was chairman of the Board of Finance roughly from 2006 to 2011, when she became first selectman, correct?
Right, when you became selectman, she became chair.
Yes. And so the record is clear. In 2006, I had been the chairman of the Board of Finance. And then I became a selectman. I was appointed when there was after a special election in town to fill a vacancy. And I just want to be clear, it was sometime around when Ms. Gudinski took over as chair that the multiple meetings noticed in one, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. You notice multiple meetings, multiple dates in one agenda because you want to get the dates out there, right? You want to give people notice of it. Okay. And the practice of noticing proposed action on each of those began around 2006 or 2007 when Ms. Gudinski was chair, isn't that correct?
I'm not sure before that because I just started serving.
Okay.
So all the time I've been on board that time.
No further questions, thank you.
The budget development workshops that were established by vote on February 13th included the April 4th special meeting, am I correct?
Correct.
You never canceled that meeting.
No, I did not.
So, as far as a member of the Board of Finance is concerned, they should have shown up that night, correct?
Yes, as the other members did.
And in fact, other members did. Did you have a quorum that night?
Yes,
You took votes that night?
yes.
Okay. I have nothing further.
Any recross?
No recross.
I think the thing naturally winds down then, right?
May I
Okay.
ask
Yes,
a couple
sure.
questions? You mentioned, and I know that there's an exhibit whereby you send out the agenda to a number of people. It looks like it includes the town clerk.
Town clerk, town selectman, and the board of finance members.
These are all the other members?
Mhm.
Okay, and this is typically the way you would send out an agenda to the town clerk?
Yes,
Okay,
it's the only way I've seen.
and so at that point, does he or she post the notice on the town website? Or?
Correct.
Okay.
So in the town hall, they have a board.
Okay, and does the Board of Finance itself have its own little website?
We do have a website. We really don't have any control over what's on there right now.
Do you- Do you know if the agendas go up, and the notices go up on that website? Or do they just go up on the town website?
I'm not sure if the agendas go there.
I can offer a stipulation, obviously I've had I'm counsel here today, but I have experience with the town. Those are posted in a section of the town website by board, but only in the town website, as I
Right,
understand.
I didn't think
Board
they were
of
posted in the
No,
same
there's not a
website.
separate
So
website.
it's like if you would go to the town of
Thank you.
Marlborough
Yeah.
website, there might be like a heading for notices.
Exactly,
Okay.
and then Board of Selectmen, Board of
We
Finance.
usually-
Thank you, that's
Sorry
all I
about
have.
that.
Okay.
Mhm.
I take it both sides have rested then?
The complaint, yes.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, you understand, so you can't ask questions, okay? All right, so, now, does,
I just wanted to give more information.
okay, any oral argument, or does it wanna, you guys would just wanna, council just wanna, reduce it to briefs? And if you're gonna have briefs, then not to oral argument, if you're gonna do oral argument, then the briefs, whatever your pleasure
I
is.
have a brief and I have no preference.
Okay.
I have a brief, I would like to offer a couple of comments that will be in addition to, I'm not intending to repeat what's in the brief.
Okay.
We take issue, and may I proceed, Commissioner?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, right, yeah. Silence is acquiescence, yes, go ahead.
We take issue with the practice of a block notice of all these meetings with the inclusion of the possible action. And where the practice has been to specifically notice anything that would specifically go on. We've heard in point of fact that every meeting other than the April 4th meeting received a specific notice. And we know that on the April 4 meeting, the library, the bookkeeper from the Board of Education, and the selectmen were not on the agenda. This created a situation which could have been confusing. This created a situation that was confusing to my client and to members of the public. I would simply close by saying, we talk about this practice as reversing the normal freedom of information requirements. It's the board that should put the people on notice. It's aptly summed up by a comment made by a member of the public who also happens to be a member of the Board of Selectmen, that if you don't come to the meetings, you can't complain. That's not how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be that the public gets to know what's going to happen. And that's not what happened here. It becomes a shell game. To know what meeting the budget was voted on, a member of the public would have to lift the shell from March 20th, lift the shell from March 27th, lift the shell from April 2nd. What if they missed April 4th? They'd look to the shell of April 10th. It's too late. If you missed one of those five, if you missed that one of five, then you wouldn't get to participate. That's the reverse of what should happen in Freedom of Information, and we would respectfully ask that you recommend that the Commission reverse that decision.
Attorney Chappell, do you want to?
I do, and I'll be brief. I think the exhibits, specifically including Ms. Petroni's email, included within respondents number 4, sums this up as a political football that's being thrown to the Commission. It's clear that Ms. Petroni, if not others, were on notice of this meeting in plenty of advance notice to know that this would happen. This was the practice. Budget, and this is a common tactic, if you will, throughout the state, I'm sure, including my own town, for the record. There are budget workshops, and yes, sometimes there are things that go on that you may wanted to have been at. It might have been called a workshop that went on. You've heard that historically there have been votes at these actions. The fact of the matter is that in this particular circumstance, the April 4th meeting effectively did nothing. Under the charter, and the Board of Finance chair has testified to this fact, and it's effectively stipulated, this was not, the April 4th meeting was not the end game. The April 29th meeting was. The same figures and same votes, same items, same portions of the budget were voted on April 29th, where Ms. Petroni had the chance to discuss. She was the opposition vote, the lone opposition vote, and that's where the political stance comes from. Her email talks about it as being a campaign issue. This proceeding, this FOIA proceeding being a campaign issue. She's not worried about the public knowing or not knowing about this. She's mad with what happened, and that comes clear in her testimony and in her testimony through her email, if nothing else. The notice can include more than one meeting, and that again is common. It would be insane for FOIA to require that each and every notice for every single meeting that these volunteer boards pursue have to have an individual piece of paper that then has to be published and posted, and one can imagine the paper chase that would create, and not to mention the expense of the town, and the policy would just not, there's no reason for that. The budget creation is a moving target, if you will. There are many people that have input, many department heads, the Board of Selectmen, the town. You've heard about the regional versus the local Board of Education. It's a moving target, and they have limited time, as you know, to post within 24 hours, which is why the workshops got posted in February, to put the public and members of the commission or the board on notice. That was done. There's no dispute it wasn't done. Effectively, it appears Ms. Petroni, being mad with the result, has looked back and said, I wish I were there. Well, I understand she has other circumstances which may not allow her to be at certain meetings. That's not, clearly the respondents are sympathetic to that and empathize fully. That's not the issue here. The issue here is, was the notice sufficient? And the respondent's stance is it was more than sufficient. Thank you.
Can I just correct one thing? And I just want to make sure that our position is clear. First of all, what council says, and I by no means mean this as a criticism of council, nor of Ms. Godbout, about the town budget meeting being able to amend the budget is only partially true. If you look at section 6.5.6 of the charter, which you have, the budget, well, in theory, and then we can talk about, off the record, the political football that's been kicked in Marlborough, but in theory, the budget can be reduced at the town meeting by a majority vote. It can't be increased. Second, with regard to...
That's the town meeting, not the
Yeah,
public
the town
hearing.
meeting, correct.
Not the public hearing.
Second, with regard to this being essentially a political vendetta or political football, Ms. Petroni can't be here. She wasn't able to attend some of the budget meetings because of her health. Whether or not she was confused is certainly something that I believe is relevant to the commission. She was, per her testimony. I think more importantly, however, is the board's obligation, town government's obligation to the people. You look at the comment of Mr. Porteous, he happens to be the citizen who made the comment, who believed that the meeting on, my terms, not his, the meeting on April 4th was illegal because it was never noticed. The public expressed its confusion. This is a situation that could in and of itself have been confusing, but because of the possible action on all of those dates, all that needs to be added is that taken away, and a multiple meeting date would be clear. Make it clear when the vote on the budget will be, and there will be no confusion.
I just want to make sure to actually hand you a copy of my brief. That's
And I'll do the same.
original plus 2.
Okay, that's great.
Why don't you,
Thank you. And John, I did give a copy to council.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, well, listen, I'd like to compliment both council for their professionalism. I'd like to say we always get it, but, you know, but I do appreciate both council. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.